Welcome back. It is time for another edition, a post-game, the day after Christmas edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. Yes, show covering your Las Vegas Raiders, your triumphant Las Vegas Raiders. They win on Christmas Day, downing the Kansas City Chiefs 20-14. Huge win for Raider Nation. Huge win for Antonio Pierce. Huge win for the Raiders. And to talk about it, we're here with you on Silver and Black Today. Scott Gulbransen, my co-host, is Mr. Moton. He's senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report, also Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com, where you can also catch my work as well. Mo, boy, I'll tell you what an epic display for the Raiders defensively in this game. This win had so many underlying stories that were key to this franchise. And we're going to get into the Antonio Pierce. I know that's a big thing, and we're going to talk about that, but we're going to wait till the second segment. The first segment I want to devote really to the game itself, the players who made the game, and all of that, all of the things we saw in Kansas City on Christmas Day, because there's quite a bit to talk about there. But you look at what this team has been able to do now under Antonio Pierce at 4-3. This win, this is their signature win of the season. They go to Kansas City, a place they have not won since John Gruden was coach in 2020, the infamous victory lap around Arrowhead Stadium. They go in there, and they don't just win. And again, there's offensive struggles. We'll talk about it. But the defense of the Raiders from the get-go, it was 1970s Raiders football. Punch you in the mouth. And Antonio Pierce told us that in the press conference, and I mentioned it in our last show, that the only way to stop trick plays, all this stuff, was to punch him in the mouth. Well, the Raiders came out defensively, Mo, from the get-go. A struggling Chiefs team, doesn't matter. The Raiders set the pace early, didn't they?
Absolutely. I think the Raiders had 3 sacks in the first quarter and a half of play. It was clear that the tone was being set early. And Malcolm Kuntz and Max Crosby had Patrick Mahomes running around the field all day. And it caused the Chiefs' offense to look very discombobulated. I was on the X while the game was going on early, and I hear the commentators, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, and they're kind of asking the question, what's wrong with the Chiefs' offense? What's wrong with the Chiefs' offense? And I push back on that, and I'm like, it's clear what's wrong with the offense. It's the Raiders' defense. We have to give credit to the Raiders' defense, because a lot of people want to say something is wrong with the Chiefs' offense. And while they have some issues, on Christmas Day, their biggest issue was the Raiders' defense and their pass rush. The coverage on the back end was also pretty solid, because there were a bunch of times where Patrick Mahomes had time to throw, but he had no one to throw to. So I think we need to give more credit to this Raiders defense. I've been trying to trumpet the defense every week. Right now, they're 8th in scoring. Going into that game, they were 9th in scoring. So they're creeping up the rankings. But this defense has typically played well this season, even in the games where the Raiders have struggled to score points. Now I think you're seeing the extra swagger and confidence that Antonio Pierce brings to that football team. And I like what I saw out of Jack Jones. A lot of people say that Jack Jones shouldn't have stared down Patrick Mahomes on that pick 6. And I say, I like that swagger from Jack Jones. Show Patrick Mahomes you're not afraid. Show the Chiefs that you're not afraid of them. If you're the Raiders and you've been punked by the Chiefs for the past 3 years, as you said, since 2020 week 5, you want to show that you're out there and you're equals to the Chiefs. Regardless of what the score has said over the past 3 years, you want to show that you're not going to cower in Patrick Mahomes' greatness. You're going to go out there and, as Antonio Pierce said, punch him in the mouth and win the football game. That's the mentality you need to have against the Chiefs. You can't go, oh, Patrick Mahomes, he's an all-pro quarterback. He has 2 Super Bowls. No, Patrick Mahomes, you're going to go down. You're going to go down frequently. I believe the patriarch of the Raiders franchise says something like the quarterback has to go down. He has to go down hard. So
yes,
Patrick Mahomes went down plenty of times on Christmas, and that's part of the reason the Chiefs only scored 14 points and why the Raiders won the football game.
Well, and Mo, you talked about it too, and I know there were some people that took issue with Jack Jones not only staring down Mahomes, but then afterwards goes to a Chiefs kid in the stands and offers him the football, and then psych pulls it back and didn't give the kid the football. And there were some people in the wider NFL community, oh, what a dick move and all. It was very Raider-esque. It was very in line with what you're talking about. And I want to say this too, to your point about not standing back and saying, "Oh, it's Patrick Mahomes." Oh, who cares? Now you look at the 2010 season, the Raiders are 9-19 against the Chiefs. It's been a one-sided rivalry. So how do you change that? You change that by not only going in and beating them at home, which they did, but you do that with the swagger. You do that to say, hey, listen, guess what? Those days are over. The days of you pushing us around, I know it's just one game. Okay, you got to build on that. But I'm just saying, to your point, you have to change the trajectory of what they think of the Raiders. Travis Kelce's run over the Raiders for 10 years. You saw him throw his helmet in frustration yesterday because of the Raiders defense hitting them in the mouth. And you're absolutely right. I was blown away because I know Raider fans get very sensitive with national media about, oh, why are they giving them credit and not us credit and all that kind of stuff. But yesterday it was absolutely true, and you called it out. You have Nance and Romo, and they are, well, what's wrong with the Chiefs? What's wrong with the Chiefs? No, you got to give credit to the Raider defense who continues to get better and better. You talked about it, top 8 in scoring now. And overall, as the game progressed, of course, I thought Tony Romo did a better job of talking about how the Raiders' young defensive backs were killing it yesterday. And you could talk about the Chiefs' lack of wide receiver. Didn't matter. The coverage was great. Why couldn't Patrick Mahomes throw the ball? Because the coverage was so good.
Two things, Scott. So the whole Jack Jones pulling the ball away from the kid. I follow Jack Jones, who is President Jack with 2 C's on the X, and he answered. He said, "I didn't snatch the ball from the kid. It was from the black dude who tried to take it. Watch it again, lollipop." So this is another case of you see something on social media. It's not exactly what you see.
Yeah.
People were saying, "Oh, it was a jerk move for him to do," and some people laughed. I didn't comment on it because remember the Devontae Adams shove to I believe it was a photographer. Early in the season, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, he looked Devontae Adams shoving a photographer," and you see the video again. It turns out that the guy crossed paths in front of him. So maybe that was last year. Maybe that was last year. It was last year, and I think it was might have been after a big game that they lost. But anyway, they lost. But I think it was in Kansas City too.
It was in Kansas City.
It was in Kansas City. I was going to say that, but. If you watch that video again, you'll see that the guy crosses in front of Devontae Adams. He didn't shove him. So in this video, after watching it again with Jack Jones, you see a guy behind the kid reaching. So I'm watching the video right now on my phone. You see a guy reaching for the ball behind the kid as Jack Jones is going to give the ball to the kid, and he pulls it back. So for the people out there saying, "Oh, Jack Jones is a jerk, and this is why he was dismissed in college because he has some issues off the field," this is another sign of that. Pump your brakes. He was pulling it back from a grown man who was trying to snatch the ball away from a kid, but that's besides the point. Going back to the actual game.
But Mo, quick though, even if he had done it to the kid, I thought it would have been funny. I know.
I think people just on social media just want something to complain about. Like they want to say, "Oh, look at these Raiders, these renegade Raiders being jerks again." And I say, look, watching the Raiders in the early 90s, which I did frequently when I could in New York City, I like that renegade attitude. I like the fact that they're not going to apologize for some of the things that they do. I like the fact that they have that swagger and attitude. And as you said, that's what Antonio Pierce said is Raider football. I believe it was our friend Q Myers who asked the question to Antonio Pierce, what exactly is Raider football? Mm-hmm. And he talked about physicality. He also called it violence in the post-game speech that he had on Monday. But he also said, it's a team that has some swagger. And as I said, Raiders defense has played well all year. Now they have extra swagger. So now I think that's translating to the field where you're seeing more plays. Raiders have 2 big man touchdowns. John Jenkins against the Chargers. Bilal Nichols against the Chiefs. 2 big man tutties. Jack Jones with 2 pick sixes in back-to-back weeks. I believe he was the first player in decades to do that. And then you have other players stepping up. And to your point, a lot of people, when they talk about the Raiders defense, they can't talk about anything other than Max Crosby. Oh, it's just Max Crosby and a bunch of other dudes. No, it's Robert Spillane making plays. It's Nate Hobbs stopping a touchdown in the end zone. Pass to Rasheed Rice that shuts down the Chiefs' drive deep in Raiders territory. No, it's Jack Jones getting 2 pick sixes. No, it's Bilal Nichols and John Jenkins in the defensive line, leaving their impression, leaving their mark on the Chiefs' defensive line. It's Malcolm Kuntz making a significant leap in his 3rd year. It's a lot of players. It's not just Mac Crosby anymore.
Yeah, and let's talk about Malcolm Kuntz, Mo, because it's a remarkable story. I mean, the way he's come now, he's played well all season. I will say that. But over the last 5 games, 6 games, maybe 7 games since Pierce took over, he has really come into his own. And it's interesting because as you see, the Raiders under McDaniels and Ziegler went out and got Tyree Wilson in the draft. They felt they needed that other bookend. They thought he would be that bookend. Wilson's still developing and doing that hybrid role inside outside, but Malcolm Kuntz has kind of solved that problem really quickly here for the Raiders. I mean, he was after Mahomes all day long, pressuring him in his face, and he is a man. And I said this. I think we went back to right after Pierce took over. They won the 2 games, and it was all about confidence, right? Building confidence with young players. Not so much that you're a playoff team, but as you get guys to build confidence, it's easier. They play looser. They play more to their ability. And I think Malcolm Kuntz is the perfect example of a guy who, given the opportunity, let loose, built confidence, and now you see where he's at.
Yeah, I believe he's at 7 sacks and 7 tackles for a loss right now.
7 sacks. Amazing.
So he had his best game. I mean, I thought he had his best game the previous week. Turns out he breaks out for 3 sacks. He believes he's 1 of 4 Raiders to have at least 3 sacks against the Chiefs. Howie Long is on that list. Tommy Kelly's on that list. Cameron Wembley is on that list. And Malcolm Kuntz edged his name in a big breakout game. I said it during my Bleacher Report Live. If you were to give out game balls for this game, Jack Jones would get one. Bilal Nichols would get one. And definitely Malcolm Kuntz would get one. And I think Evan Grote, our friend over at Sportsnot, said that it's very clear that Malcolm Kuntz is now the wingman for Max Crosby. No disrespect to Tyree Wilson. I think Tyree Wilson, you can have him on the inside and have Malcolm Kuntz and Max Crosby on the outside and have all 3 guys on the field at the same time. Even on my Bleacher Report Live, someone said Malcolm Kuntz should get an extension. And maybe that sounds like a wild idea because he is young. But I will say this: if Malcolm Kuntz balls out again in 2024, his price is only going to go up because next year he's going into a contract year. So that's maybe something the Raiders consider to keep the price down so they don't have to pay an astronomical salary to him after the 2024 season if he continues to grow. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders give him an extension after this year, assuming he finishes out strong.
Yeah, and you don't have to make it. I mean, you could do he's a young player. You could do a 3-year extension right on the end of that, and it doesn't give you too much exposure. Where if he doesn't pan out, which I don't think so. I think Malcolm Kuntz has shown every bit that he is the real deal. And to your point, at the defensive end position, it's a premium position, so the price is just going to continue to go up. And so for them to lock it in, a great point by Evan and by you there. You look at also, too, the performances of Divine Diablo. Robert Spillane continues to do well. You talked about Nate Hobbs put up huge numbers, had 1 penalty, didn't matter. He made up for it. And that's what I like about this defense that I saw against the Chiefs. Everybody's sort of, I thought, in watching the response in social media with Raider Nation, everybody was kind of waiting for that to collapse, for this defense to get tired. And I even posted, I said, listen, what's remarkable is the offense, which we'll talk about in a second, offense couldn't do anything other than rush the ball. Of course, we have to talk about Zamir White in a bit, but they could not move the ball. They could not score. And we've seen it before. When that happens to the Raiders, this defense would get tired naturally, not because they couldn't do well. It's just when you're on the field that long, it's natural. But I will tell you, this idea that Antonio Pierce, and you got to credit for him, and some people made fun of it, and I even kind of was like, well, I don't get this. This idea of focusing on the second half and finishing strong, and the focus on the defense finishing strong, the conditioning that they do. Because this defense, Mo, towards the end of the game, everybody was kind of worried, oh, boy, is this now? They went down, they scored the touchdown on the Raiders, the Chiefs did, and you're like, oh, boy, now it's a 1-score game. and the defense stepped right back up. They did not relent. We've seen first half of the season, that's not what would have happened, would it?
No, that would have been the start of a collapse. And I think
Correct.
that's what a lot of Red fans were waiting for. Once
Yes.
the Chiefs went down and scored and it was 20-14, a lot of fans, and I saw it on my timeline, a lot of fans are saying, oh, here we go. The Chiefs are going to come back. They're going to win 21-20. Patrick Mahomes is going to be crowned the greatest quarterback ever because he has another game-winning comeback drive. And it didn't happen. Raiders defense shut it down real quick. And as I said, I think that goes to the mentality that Pierce is bringing to that locker room, right? So typically, I think under Josh McDaniels, that team would have been like, here we go again, because we've seen this team collapse under Josh McDaniels. Now with Antonio Pierce, it's more like we have to believe we can win this football game. Forget what happened in the past. We believe we're better than that other team. I believe Amik Robertson said, we have more dogs than the Chiefs do on their team. And I think it was Vinny Bonsignor who asked him again about that comment. And he was like, we simply just have more dogs than they do. And I made a comment on the X that when Jack Jones had that pick six, and a lot of people said, don't poke the bear, who is Patrick Mahomes. I said, well, the Raiders have a pack of dogs that took down the bear on Christmas Day. And I think that it's not everything. Having the swagger mentality is not everything, because you still have to make plays, but it's a big part of it. And anything you do, even outside of football, you and I doing this, whether you're a writer, whether you're out there in the professional world at an office, part of your performance and part of you being able to do the best that you can do is having the confidence that you can do it. Because if you lack the confidence, chances are you aren't going to get the results. And the Raiders clearly have the confidence right now, and they're getting the results.
Right. And all this idea, and you said it earlier, and we'll close out the segment with this a little bit. All this idea that you somehow have to be deferential to Patrick Mahomes because he happens to be, and I still believe he is, the most talented quarterback in the league, is BS. It's BS. You don't have to do anything. This is a game where you have to get competitive edge. So you talk about confidence, but you also have to mentally break down the opponent. It's not just physical, it's mental too. So Jack Jones with the pick six, knowing Patrick Mahomes over the last couple weeks, those guys knew, the Raiders knew, they've seen what the Chiefs have been doing. They saw Patrick Mahomes frustrated on the sideline, yelling, screaming, press conferences, blah, blah. He knows. So when you get an opportunity to rub it in and get a mental advantage, you do it. And guess what? It worked. It worked. So the people who don't like it are those who aren't going to like any outcome unless it was the outcome they wanted, which in that case probably was the Chiefs winning.
The other people that won't like it don't understand Raider football, because I grew up on watching the Raiders do things like that, and again, not apologize for it and being unabashedly confident and brash. That's part of Raider football, and again,
absolutely,
that's why a lot of fans like Antonio Pierce so much, because he brings back that brand of football that a lot of Raider fans miss so much.
The autumn wind, my friend, swaggering boisterously.
Yes,
not swaggering with respect.
Swaggering
right, boisterously.
Boisterously, exactly.
That's what Raider football is. Absolutely. Well said. All right. We're going to close out this first segment of Silver and Black today, the post-Christmas edition. By the way, I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas, as I did. So thank you so much for the wishes over the holiday. And we're back to football. We're back to talking Raider football. When we come back, we're going to talk about Coach Pierce. Gee, that story, is that anything anybody wants to talk about? We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll also talk about the offense as part of that story, too, because yesterday was not a good day for the Raiders offense, with the exception of Zamir White, who has now put together 2 games, maybe answered some questions we had, whether or not he could be RB2, perhaps RB1, if Josh Jacobs isn't back next year. We'll talk about all of that when we return here to Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Original Podcast. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Original Podcast, also heard on The Bet in Las Vegas on the radio if you're with us there. Thanks for being with us. We are talking about the Raiders' big Christmas gift to you. Yes, their big victory over the Kansas City Chiefs, 20-14 on Christmas Day. What a way to start your Christmas day, especially if you're on the West Coast. That was Christmas morning. You're probably sitting around with your family, having some coffee, having some breakfast, whatever you guys were doing. What a great way to start out. You look at what the Raiders were able to do, held the Chiefs, to 300 yards of total offense, 5 of 16 on third down. Just amazing. The 2 turnovers, of course. And even though the Chiefs held the ball for 9 minutes longer than the Raiders, that tells you just how strong this Raiders defense was. And should we be surprised? The defense taking on the persona of their interim head coach, Antonio Pierce. Of course, Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, deserves a lot of credit as well. So shout out to him, because this defensive team has been playing well all season long and has only gotten better as the year has progressed. Scott Gulbransen along with you. My co-host is Mo Moton. He's a senior NFL writer over Bleacher Report, also Raiders columnist at sportsnaut.com, where you can catch his work there. You can also catch my work on sportsnaut.com. Thanks for being back with us. All right, Mo, elephant in the room, Antonio Pierce. Everybody, I mean, I'd say 80% of the people I see, not only within Raider Nation, but nationally, national pundits, former players who are on national TV, everybody now saying, especially with the win yesterday, and not just the win yesterday. I have to say this because this is significant. Not just the win, but how they won, that Antonio Pierce needs to get this job. I know you said as much on Monday. I am there as well. I still think that they have to go through the process. I saw a lot of people say, you just got to take the tag off, interim tag. You can't. League rules, they have to do an interview process. But that could be just a process. So I understand that. But Mo, it's hard. I can find reasons to be skeptical still. That does not mean that I don't believe that you earned the job. And I think that you look what he's done now at 4-3. They got 2 more games to go, the Raiders do. But the attitude, we talked about swagger in the first segment, the sort of turn we've seen with that. The results always haven't been good, but the results we've seen, this big landmark win for this team, I should say this highlight win for this team in 2023, boy, the momentum is so far going in his direction, it would be hard to see him not get the job now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, this was a statement game for Antonio Pierce. Now, the Raiders also are alive in the playoff hunt. I don't want to dig too far into playoff discussions and snares right now. The Raiders obviously have to win out to give themselves a good shot. But as I said, statement game for Antonio Pierce. I outlined what Antonio Pierce had working in his favor over on Sportsnaut last week. I said he already has player buy-in. We're starting to see player development from that Chargers game. We saw it again against the Chiefs. As I mentioned, Malcolm Kuntz, Jack Jones, Trayvon Merrick almost had an interception. Samir White coming along now. And he also had his side of the ball playing well. Now, I know a lot of people don't associate the defensive side of the ball with Antonio Pierce, but that is his linebacker core. He was a former D coordinator at Arizona State, so I would assume that he has some input on the defense and the way it's playing right now and some impact there. So he had those 3 things working in his favor, and I said he's missing one element to put him over the top as a head coaching candidate, and it's a quality win against a winning football team or a team in the playoff hunt, and he got that yesterday. So in my opinion, if you're hiring today, he checks all the boxes to be the head coach. And I think at this point in time, the way the defense is playing, you don't want to disrupt that continuity. You don't want to disrupt that development and growth on that side of the ball. I don't think Bo Hart agrees it as the offensive coordinator. It's very clear that Aiden O'Connell is a backup. You get him a quarterback, the Raiders get a quarterback, they get a new OC, and hopefully the offense improves, and now you have a well-balanced football team. But as far as Antonio Pierce has his reach on defense with the linebackers, with the players in that locker room, specifically the leaders, I don't see how you turn him down at the interview right now. As you said, the Raiders can't just remove the tag. You have to go through the interview process. But as I said during the Bleacher Report Live, assuming the Raiders don't flatline or face plant in their last 2 games, if you're Mark Davis, you have to be saying to Antonio Pierce, as long as you don't screw it up and get blown out in these last 2 games, you're going to get the job.
Yeah.
But you have to finish the season, on a solid note. Don't just, I got the job. I don't have to do I don't have to coach anymore. I'm the man now. No, the Raiders, as I said, the Raiders have a shot to still make the playoffs at 7-8, and they go against the Colts and the Denver Broncos in the last 2 weeks of the season. But as I said, I think it goes without saying, you don't have to say this. As long as the Raiders don't face plant or flatline these last 2 games, Antonio Pierce should be the guy for that head coaching job in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, and I think that's what we said. I had a lot of people come back at me like, "Oh, you said you didn't want him as coach." I said, "No, no, no, no. We've been very consistent on this show.
Play
I
it
think
out.
the two of us, and we
Play it
said,
out.
play it out. You got to see who's in the candidate pool. But we always said he had the opportunity to earn it, and I think yesterday he got over that hump to a certain degree. And I think that, to your point, yes, unless if they were to get blown out 40-0 over the next 2 weeks, you might have
Then
some
yeah,
questions. It's
right.
not going to happen. I just don't see the way this defense is going, the way the trajectory is going. Anything can happen, of course, but they're going to Indy next week on New Year's Eve. So if he goes to Indy, and Indy's reeling right now, right, because of these 2 losses in a row that really hurt their playoff chances after they were on a nice little run, and Gardner Minshew, all that stuff. They go to Indy and win that game. Then you're talking about not only are you 2 games over 500 under Antonio Pierce, but then you also win 2 games on the road. It's hard in the NFL to win on the road. I don't care who you are. So to me, all the momentum is going in his direction. And I think you saw it yesterday. You saw it with that defense. And listen, again, we'll talk about the offense, because the offense is, as far as Bo Hardigree calling it, as far as Aiden O'Connell being the quarterback, not good in Kansas City. Of course, you had Zamir White, 145 yards, had a great game. But overall, you have to look at where is this going. And I think this is the case where I'm with Raider Nation on this one now, because look, I got convinced yesterday a lot, because this team, you look at, just like when they came out against the Vikings, right, off the bye week, and they didn't look good, they didn't look prepared, they didn't look ready to go, and a lot of people wanted to make excuses. Well, it's not his team, and I said no, and you and I both said no. That's on the head coach. You're coming off a bye week. You need to be prepared for the game. They were not. Antonio Pierce owned it. Fans didn't want him to own it, but he did own it. He took total responsibility. Then they come out against the Chargers. You saw what they did there, and they come out against the Chiefs. Well, that's, to me, head coach gets credit for that, okay? Because he is the leader. So you got to give him his flowers. So he gets that. And so now you see them come out against the Chiefs. Now, if they do that again, win or lose against the Colts and the Broncos, then you start to see that pattern. I think that's what you start to see. And you saw Antonio Pierce get emotional in the post-game interview when he asked about that win. And I think there was a sense of, not only does it show you how much he cares for his players, and you see why he's got the buy-in, Mo, but he also knew that was a huge game for him. He wasn't being selfish, but it was a relief. It was emotion related to, okay, I needed a signature. He knew he needed a signature win, Mo. He knew it.
Of course. Yes.
And he got it in a way that was so, they overcame a putrid offensive performance overall, okay? Terrible. It was almost as bad as Minnesota. So you look at that, but the defense and that made the win even sweeter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think a lot of things that we've been saying, even though some fans will push back on it, I think Antonio Pierce understood, even if he didn't say that at the podium. So we said Antonio Pierce is in an audition. Can't dismiss him. I said you can't dismiss him and you can't crown him until you start to see more results. And you pointed out the fact that he was emotional after that win against the Chiefs. And I think he understood that it was still a working audition. Now, of course, the season doesn't end today, so the interview process doesn't start today. But I think he understands that with the win over the Chiefs and the way the Raiders beat the Chiefs, and I know the score was 20-14, but I feel like the Raiders controlled that game from start to finish. Now, there was some sloppiness early with drops for both teams, a muff punt from DeAndre Carter. I get that. But the Chiefs were never in a moment where they seemed to establish a rhythm. The Raiders had them off balance the entire game. This wasn't a fluke win that you would say, oh, that's a fluky win. The Raiders won on a last-second Hail Mary, or it was one turnover. No, the Raiders dominated that football game. So I think Pierce understanding the way the Raiders won that game, it puts him in the driver's seat for the head coaching position. Now, we'll see who the candidates are, and I think that's the only possible way that Antonio Pierce doesn't get the job, if Mark Davis falls in love with a candidate that has, a proven resume and is a big name possibly. That's the only way I see it being kind of murky for Pierce. But I think Pierce in his head with that win understands that, look, I've checked a lot of boxes. I've done enough right now to be the front runner for the position right now, not knowing who the other candidates are. And assuming that I don't fumble it in these last 2 games, and as you said, I don't see that happening because these players are showing incredible fight right now for themselves, as Devontae Adams said, for the names on the front and back of their jerseys. And they're showing incredible fight for Antonio Pierce, who's vying for that job. So I don't expect them to get blown out. They may lose a game. I think they have a good chance of winning both. They may lose, but they're not going to lose by blowout by double digits to the Broncos or the Colts on New Year's Eve. So I think Antonio Pierce's emotion just comes from knowing, wow, I was able to do an incredible job and turn around this football team that was 3-5 and pretty much lifeless in some games, to give them some swagger, and now to have a winning record at 4-3 as the interim head coach is huge for me.
No, it is huge. And listen, I think that the way it goes down, unless something drastically changed, and to your point, you don't know who the candidate is. If Jim Harbaugh wants the Raiders job specifically, would Mark Davis suddenly think, well, geez, I love Antonio, I want to keep him, but I got to talk to Jim? I don't know. We don't know that. I'm reading tea leaves, Mo, and I just feel like the momentum, everything going in that right direction for Pierce doesn't happen. I just don't see somebody coming in and being a candidate that wows Mark Davis so much away from the mood, the feeling, but anything can happen. I just don't see it happening. Right.
Right. And I'll say this, what's the old saying, Scott? If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So,
exactly.
So the Raiders are now on the upswing with Antonio Pierce. They're getting the development from the players. Why go off that track? Why disrupt that? It just doesn't make sense. In fact, to the old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Antonio Pierce actually fixed it because it was broken under Josh McDaniels. So Antonio Pierce actually came in and cleaned up the mess.
Yeah.
So I don't see why you need to fix it again if your team is now responding to him.
Right, and not perfect. Things aren't perfect.
No,
now listen, our good friend Kane on X.com, shout out to Kane. He said it to me after the game yesterday because I was talking about how they won despite not having offense, and he pointed out, of course, Zamir White. But you got to have balance on offense, which they didn't have. But anyway, he said there, and I agree with him, which is now you have that team with a quarterback with some maybe just a little bit of improvement on the offensive line, and maybe yesterday they win by 3 scores. I mean, honestly, because that's what they didn't have is they don't have the playmaker quarterback. And before, look, we've been very supportive of the development of Aiden O'Connell on this show. But as I pointed out yesterday on X as well, Mo, you saw there were times he got sacked where literally if he could just step and move a little bit with his feet. I'm not even talking being really mobile, just somewhat functionally mobile. He would have gotten out of that. We saw that with Patrick Mahomes, who got out of situations because he can move with his feet. And so you look at that and you say, okay, and I'm not making excuses for Antonio Pierce or the Raiders, but you look at them at 4-3 under his direction with a rookie quarterback, with an offensive line that's been without 2 starters now for the most part of 3 games, without their starting running back, okay, and without their starting tight end yesterday too. And so you start to see, boy, if you put him in that place, and I think Champ Kelly is going to get the job too, by the way. If Champ Kelly gets the job, I think this is where Mark Davis needs to say, okay, Antonio, you're going to be the full-time head coach after the interview process, of course. And Champ, you're the GM. I want Champ to help you, Antonio, get the best offensive mind we can get to bring in here, because we're going to go get a young quarterback, and we need somebody who we can trust to develop that quarterback along with you. And then you go. So I'm okay with that plan because I agree. And Mo, on this show, I've had co-hosts who've had no radio experience. You and I have had people that have written with us on different websites, including my own website when I had one, that hadn't writing experience. I love giving people an opportunity. You don't just give it to them because they've had previous experience. Is that a tick against them? No, I shouldn't say against them. Is that a challenge for them to overcome? Absolutely. But I think you see Antonio Pierce, what Raider fans like to say is he's the quote-unquote leader of men. I think that's what they've had. They had that a little bit with Gruden, but that was a whole mess. So now you have a guy who lives the embodiment of the Raider spirit. They haven't had that in a really long time. You could maybe say Jack Del Rio had it a little bit with that kind of linebacker mentality, but this is a very different feel. You have a lot of momentum going there, and I think if you get him the right pieces, And it starts with a quarterback and it starts with an offensive mind.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think you said was Kane on the X. I had the same thought. If the Raiders had an average quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
that game is a blowout by
Yes.
by the end of the third quarter. The Raiders probably win maybe 31-14 and flip the first score of well, actually the Chiefs won 31-17. Probably Raiders win 31-14, 31-17 if they have just a quarterback that can get that defense off the field, because I said it during the game. I said at some point the Raiders offense is going to have to give them something if they're going to win the football game. Now the
Yeah.
Raiders offense didn't score a touchdown, but Zamir White had 145 rushing yards, and he had that dagger of a 43-yard run to seal the football game. So
Yes,
the
sir.
offense finally gave him something at the end to seal it, and I was right about that. But as you said, going forward, I would like to see the Raiders upgrade their quarterback position with an athletic quarterback. I wrote a piece, if you remember, a few weeks ago. I said the Raiders quarterback room is very archaic. They have a bunch of guys that have limited mobility or can't really move at all. Brian
Right.
Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell, Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm still struggling with this with some people on the X saying they don't need a running quarterback. Pocket passers can get the job done, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that pocket passers can't get the job done, but what I'm saying is that your offense would be a lot more optimal if you have a quarterback who has functional mobility. Again, that
Right.
doesn't mean he has to run for 50 yards a game like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, score a bunch of touchdowns with his feet. It means he's able to move when he has to extend plays, keep plays alive, and evade pressure. And as you said, you saw that with Patrick Mahomes. Now, of course, Patrick Mahomes had to run because his receivers weren't open, but there were plenty of times where Patrick Mahomes extended plays because he has that mobility. While he can still throw from the pocket, he can use his legs. And that's what the Raiders need on their side as at the quarterback position. At best, Aiden O'Connell is a backup in this league.
And that's the important thing here too, because look, I would love to see Aiden O'Connell a Raider for 10 years. I got no problem with Aiden O'Connell because I think he's the kind of quarterback that you need him to come in and spell a starter who's either injured or whatever. Yeah. You can win games with him. I'm not saying you can't win games with him. And I think this is where people still, and I don't know, maybe it's our current times, Mo. People either want to be right and make somebody wrong. Like you can't ever find common ground. And that's what I try to tell people. Why are you hating on? I had a guy on YouTube just will not stop. And I finally just stopped responding to him with all due respect because I'm like, dude, you're just looking for me to say that I'm wrong. And that's not what it's about. It's not about winning an argument. It's about if you look at the NFL, even examples of Matthew Stafford, okay, or Jared Goff. Well, they're pocket passers. They are more pocket passers, yes, but they move with their legs. I'm not saying they're fleet of foot, they're Aaron Rodgers or they're Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying that, but they know how to evade pressure and they are more athletic and they move around the pocket. And this tells me, and this is not a put down on anybody. I want to make sure I say it's the holiday season. I'm in a really good mood, despite my wing being injured here. And that is that if you watch other teams, some of you guys out there, you just don't watch a lot of football. You might watch highlights, and that's cool. I get it. It's a busy life. You can't sit there and watch football games all the time. Mo and I get paid to do that. I get it. Okay. If you watch a lot of football, you cannot show me a pure packet passer that does not move well in the NFL anymore that is being exceptionally successful. You just can't find it. You can go to Tom Brady and all the Super Bowls. I get it. He's an anomaly. That era is over, especially in the last 3 years. Follow the way offensive schemes are. Follow the way defenses are changing to match offensive schemes. The way pressure comes in now on the quarterback, you have to be able to move. Okay? That's why the Colts have been good, even with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, because he moves. So with that said, the Raiders have to get, I think they have to go get 2 quarterbacks, Mo. They have to get the young quarterback. They got to do whatever they can in the first round to get as high as they can in the first round, wherever that at. It doesn't have to be in the top 5. I know a lot of you guys think it has to be one of 3 guys or you don't get a good quarterback. Not so. Got to do that. And then I would go get another veteran, whether that veteran's Justin Fields for a 3rd round pick or whether it's another veteran to come in that can be functionally mobile and let those 3 guys go into camp without a starter and say, hey, whoever wins the job wins the job.
I just have one issue with people calling Matthew Stafford a pocket passer. For anyone who watched that Rams Saints game last Thursday, he clearly has functional mobility. You saw him move
Incredible.
in and out of the pocket multiple times. If you've watched Matthew Stafford while he was in Detroit, he used his functional mobility plenty of times. I know he's what
He would have
34,
been killed if
35
he
years
didn't.
old. I know he's 34, 35 years old right now, but Matthew Stafford is a functionally mobile quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah, he can throw. He's one of the best passers still in this league, but he can move in the pocket, and that's what I'm saying the Raiders need. Again, I'm not saying the Raiders need a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. They need a guy who's naturally athletic and naturally mobile,
Yes.
but can still throw from the pockets. I think that's where with me, I don't know what where the pushback with you comes from, but with me, people are saying, oh, they don't need a guy who's going to run around, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a quarterback who can move, but his primary thing is throwing from the pocket, but has the ability to move. Doesn't rely on it to pick up yards, but can do it if necessary. And
Right.
as I said, Matthew Stafford is a perfect example of that.
And Mo, what I tend to get is I get the people who are saying, how can you say that about O'Connell? He's in his first year. You have to give him time to develop. And then they point to guys like, oh, what about Patrick Mahomes? I'm like, Patrick Mahomes had 45 touchdowns, 50 touchdowns his second year, his first full year in the league. So don't compare it to Patrick Mahomes. But he's a functional mobile quarterback. But nonetheless, but the comparison there is, listen, Mo, I am now over 50 years old. Okay. I'm just under 5'10", because as you older, you actually start to shrink a tiny bit. Just under 5'10" now. I'm never going to be 6'2". Just not going to happen, right? I can work hard. I can get in better shape, which I need to do, by the way. I can do all that. I'm never going to be 6'2". Aiden O'Connell is never going to be able to move with his feet the way some of those other quarterbacks. It does not mean he's not a good quarterback. It does not mean he can't be a Raider for life. It just is what it is. And that's what I'm trying to say to people. Like, well, you don't know what he's going to be. Look, there are certain attributes you can't change, and that's one of them.
And that's what I was going to say, is that you don't get more athletic as you age. It just doesn't work like that. If you're not athletic at 22, you're not going to be athletic at 26, 27, 28. Because remember, Aiden O'Connell is an older rookie.
Yeah.
And I believe he came in the league at 24. So he's not going to get more naturally athletic as he ages. It just doesn't work like that biologically. But I do agree with you. I think the Raiders should bring in two quarterbacks, obviously draft one early, and then whoever the OC is, maybe bring in a veteran who's familiar with that OC system to be the third quarterback to push Aiden O'Connell. Because again, you're not, if you're a new offensive coordinator, a new play caller, you're not just going to be giving out jobs. You want your quarterbacks in every position outside of Devontae Adams, Colton Miller, to earn their starting job.
Right.
And I think that with Aiden O'Connell, even if you do keep him, assuming you do keep him, and the Raiders should, have a battle with whoever comes in as the veteran. Have that competition. Iron sharpens iron, right? So that's what we talk about every year at training camp. Iron sharpens iron. You push guys in-house so that you all could be better. And I think having a healthy competition for the number 2 quarterback spot with a functioning mobile quarterback would also be good for Aiden O'Connell.
Well, and that's why I talked about it, and I know we've talked about it here on the show. I think we were kind of maybe even the first show to really talk about it, which was the idea of perhaps giving Justin Fields a shot. If the Bears, looks like the Bears are going to move on from him. It looks like Fields is ready to move on as well, based on his comments that you saw in some of the interviews he's done recently. And I got a lot of pushback on that. He sucks. He can't do this. He can't do that. You never know what happens, right? That's what they said about Jim Plunkett. That's what they said about Rich Gannon. Like, you don't know. But here's my point, Mo. Even with, like, well, he's going to cost too much. His option year, $24 million. Option year, you bring him in for a year, it's going to cost you $8 million. You bring him in for a year, yeah, you got to give up a 3rd-round draft pick perhaps. You bring him in for a year, it costs you $8 million. If he doesn't do well and he doesn't become your franchise quarterback, even with the rookie you draft, guess what? You let him go the next year. And you don't have to pay them. You can not exercise the option and make him a free agent and he's on the market. So to me, and I'm not saying it has to be Justin Fields, but somebody in a situation like that, you have very little downside to me, because if he balls out and he goes nuts and he's everything everybody thought he would be, well then, boy, now you have maybe a franchise quarterback for a couple years, and you have 2 options on him, and you have a rookie to develop underneath him who, if that rookie develops, guess what you do? You say, see ya, Justin Fields, even though you had a couple good years. Now we got another rookie right behind you, and we're good to go. And if he doesn't pan out, it costs you $8 million, and you say sayonara.
Here's my thing about Justin Fields. I'm going to make multiple points here, and I want people to follow me very closely because there was a lot of talk about Justin Fields on the X, and a lot of
Oh
people had
yeah.
a lot of opinions that, or you said this or you said that. No, that's not what I said. A lot of people think I'm saying Justin Fields should be the starter of the Raiders in 2024. That's not
No.
what I'm saying. First of all, and the other thing is, a lot of people think Justin Fields is going to cost the Raiders a first round pick. He's not. Not after the year that he's had. He's not going to cost a first round pick. I could see Justin Fields going for a third rounder,
Right.
maybe with a late round pick, if that's the cost. If you're the Raiders right now, right, and you are in the thick of the playoff hunt, and you're probably, unless you trade up, you're not going to get a top quarterback prospect. The Raiders should be in the business of having as many possible potential starting quarterbacks as possible on their roster next year. Aiden
Yeah.
O'Connell, to me, is clear he's a backup. So if you're acquiring Justin Fields, you're having him compete for the job. And a lot of people say, well, Justin, as you said, Justin Fields sucks. He just runs, he can't throw, and all of this stuff. They said not a lot of the same things, but they heavily criticized Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. Geno Smith looks like he's back on the downslope for a year. Baker Mayfield on the upslope. A lot of people said, oh, Baker Mayfield can't be a starter in this league. He's not good. Geno Smith, he's not a starter in this league. He's not good. Sometimes it takes you getting to the right play caller. So
Right.
Geno Smith had Shane Waldron in Seattle. Baker Mayfield has Dave Canales in Tampa Bay. And lo and behold, they had their best seasons over the last 2 years. I believe Justin Fields could still grow as a quarterback, still a young quarterback. And as you said, the Raiders don't have to exercise his 5th-year option. You can acquire Justin Fields, have him play out his last year, and if he turns out to be a nothing burger, you let him go.
Right.
But let's say if he clicks with the offensive coordinator and he's good for a year, now you don't have to pressure your rookie quarterback to start right away. And a lot of people say, well, see, Geno Smith hasn't been able to sustain it. Who knows if Baker Mayfield can sustain it? And that's my point is, you can have a Justin Fields be pretty good for a year. What did we just say about this Chiefs game? If they had average quarterback play, they would have blown out the Chiefs. I believe
Yes.
Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Aiden O'Connell right now, right? So if you can get a Justin Fields to at least even be a bridge quarterback until your rookie is ready, because again, the Raiders may not have access to a top 5 quarterback prospect, especially if they somehow make the playoffs at 9-8. They're going to be picking like 15 to 18. So
Right.
let's say that the price is too high or teams don't want to move down. They want to keep their spots in this quarterback draft class. It's a possibility the Raiders quarterback, whoever they draft, if they do draft a rookie, may not be ready week 1. So you're rolling with, who knows, Aiden O'Connell or another veteran. And I think Justin Fields can be at least that bridge quarterback where you say, okay, we have Justin Fields ready to play right now to be a serviceable starter. We also have our rookie who we drafted at 15, 16, 17, 18, who could be our eventual franchise quarterback, but he's not quite ready yet. So Justin
Right.
Fields can play in the meantime, and then you transition to that rookie quarterback, whoever it is, and then you have that guy start for the foreseeable future.
And that's my point is, and Mo, we've said it numerous times on the show, and I just want people to understand it because you have multiple quarterbacks doesn't mean, to your point, you just made the point, and I'm just reiterating. Doesn't mean you're married to one of them, unless
Right.
okay, if you're picking first and the second and third in the draft, and you have Drake May or Caleb Williams, okay, I get it. You're married to that guy. He's coming. But other than that, have as many as you can, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And to your point, if the Raiders are picking 15th, you're looking at Michael Penix or somebody like that, who I think has a lot of upside, but they're not the player that a Drake May is. They're not the same kind of quarterback prospect. So if that's the case, I still think you take them, but you got to have that backup plan. And again, it might take you 2 more years to find the quarterback you want. I don't know. But if you can get a guy that has that functional mobility that can help make your offense more dynamic with a new offensive coordinator coming in to be with Pierce if he's the head coach, then suddenly you're starting to, as our good friend Q always says, cook with grease, right? You're able to do that. And so that's what it is. So it's not everything is black and white here. You have to go in with multiple times. It's about playing chess. And if Champ Kelly is the GM, then you got to think, okay, what are my paths to success at quarterback? There's multiple paths, not just one. If you count on just one, then you get into a situation where if it doesn't work out, you're screwed. And I don't think the Raiders need to do that. So it's all good.
And let's reiterate the point. Champ Kelly was in Chicago when the Bears drafted Justin Fields. I'm just saying, that he was part of that brain trust that brought in Justin Fields and tried to develop him. Now again, I know some Raider fans are gonna say, "Oh, he sucks. He's this. He's that." I'm gonna reiterate this point again. Sometimes it just takes you finding the right offensive coordinator, the right system to accentuate your skill set. I get Justin Fields has his issues. My issues with Justin Fields, one, he's got to stay healthy because he does run a lot. He's got to protect the football, stay healthy, and he has these turnovers. And you saw it against the Cardinals late in the game with the Bears had a commanding lead and he turns the ball over. Yes, he has those issues, and I'm not saying Justin Fields is a starter day one, but what I am saying is you give him a chance to at least compete for the job in the first year he's there, just in case the quarterback that you pick in the teens isn't ready to play yet. Because if there's no Justin Fields, if there's no viable alternative, you're starting Aiden O'Connell again in 2024.
Absolutely. And by the way, too, listen, you're right about the turnovers, and a lot of people brought that up to me about Justin Fields, and I agree with them. You can't do that, especially in situations like that. But I will say this: a surprising stat. I was reading a story the other day, fascinating story about Josh Allen and how Josh Allen turnover machine, blah blah blah. It's interesting. Over the last 5 years, the Super Bowl winning quarterbacks all were in the top 3 in interceptions. Did you know that? It's interesting. I had no idea. But it's different when you're on a winning team where the quarterback turns over the ball and it doesn't hurt you as much. I know it sounds crazy, but in a situation Justin Fields is in, if you turn over the ball like that on the Bears, different situation versus if you're the Bills and you have a high-powered offense and you can come back and score and you have a great defense like the Eagles had before the streak they've been on. So that's the difference there. So while turnovers for a young quarterback are a huge concern, to your point, you get the right coaching staff, and a lot of people are like, well, when has the Raiders ever been the right coaching staff situation? You can't have it both ways. You can't love Antonio Pierce and then say it's a bad situation if they go get a young quarterback who needs development. So,
I'll say this about turnovers. Not all turnovers are the same. But because there are interceptions at the end of halftime, at the end of games, on desperation throws. There are deflections where it's not on the quarterback. Sometimes the wide receiver's hands are made of stone. That happens. So you have to kind of look at each interception. But I'll say this: I'm okay with interceptions for as long as the quarterback is making more plays than turnover-worthy plays. You have to consider the ratio in context. Is he throwing a bunch of picks with boneheaded decisions, or is he trying to make a play and for the most part makes those plays, with the exception of times where makes the wrong read, tries to fit it into triple coverage, and it's a bad decision. And Justin Fields has some of those boneheaded plays that he's going to have to get out of his game if he's going to be a serviceable star in this league. But again, I think it goes to get him in a stable environment under a quality offensive coordinator, and let's see what he is then. I'm not so quick to call a player a bust until I see him in 2 different spots. So, as I said with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, they failed in multiple spots, and then they found the right place for them. The reports are that Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers are already talking about an extension. The Seahawks didn't draft a quarterback because they had Geno Smith. Now, again, he doesn't look like the same guy he was last year. But if you could get 1 year to give your rookie quarterback, who may not be ready to start right away, some breathing room, some time to develop, I think it would be good for the Raiders. Because again, the Raiders don't have their quarterback answer right now, so you're trying to find the right answer. Sometimes you should bring in multiple possible solutions until you find that right answer.
Right. And again, too, I had somebody yesterday, and I know we're going long on this segment, but that's okay. It was a big win, and everybody wants to listen to Mo and I espouse. But yesterday somebody said to me, "Oh, okay, so you're saying Justin Fields just needs a better team, but Derek Carr didn't need a better team." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Oh my gosh.
Derek Carr was a 9-year veteran. You're talking about a 3rd-year player, a young player. It's a different situation. So again, not all situations are the same, and I'm not always right. Look, they could bring in Justin Fields for a 3rd and a 7th round draft pick, and he could be a bust. Fine. Then you could say, "I told you so." Great. But at least you tried something.
Even if he is a bust, you drafted a rookie quarterback. So now you say, okay, Justin Fields ain't it. So we have our rookie quarterback who can now step in. And that's my point, is that you want a plan A and a plan B, because if you put all your eggs into one basket and that one plan doesn't work, you're stuck holding that plan A. Just all
And
I'm
you
saying is just
have
give yourself multiple options. That's all I'm
and you
saying.
have a second-year quarterback who played a bunch of snaps as a
Right,
starter as your
right.
backup.
And Aiden O'Connell.
Right.
Exactly. Just
You're
give yourself multiple. I'm just saying, Raider Nation, if you're listening to me right now, all I'm saying is give yourself multiple options. Don't
correct.
laser focus on one guy being the guy so that if he's not the guy, then you panic. If this
That
guy's not the guy, move on to the next one. Okay, he's
that's
not the guy, we move on to the next one.
that's why Mo dates 5 girls because he keeps his options open, see which one
Guys,
rises to the top.
guys out there know what I'm trying to say and what Scott's trying to say. Sometimes,
Keep your options
for the
open.
for the young guys listening, I know there are kids listening to this. Don't do this, but sometimes you have to keep your options open just in case one doesn't work out. You have one lying in wait just in case you might want to have a lineup of 2, 3. Just in
Right.
case. I'm just
But the
saying.
third one might be your franchise girl. She might be.
Right,
And then it's over and that's your starter. You're good.
right.
Never know. There you go. All right,
There
what a
you
way to end the segment. Okay, we come back. We're going to close out the show, talk a little bit about the future of the Raiders, talk about what's coming up. What do we need to see over the last 2 games? Everybody's on the Antonio Pierce bandwagon. That's fine with me. Got no problem there. We'll talk a little bit about that again, but we'll also talk about the Colts and the Broncos coming up. And then the AFC, crazy AFC. I think finally people are going to talk about the Ravens. They run the 49ers and Brock Purdy's MVP candidacy, of course, on Christmas night. So we'll talk a little bit how that plays into the Raiders playoff situation. Bum, bum, bum. Yes, they're still alive, unbelievably. We'll talk about that when we come back here on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Original Podcast. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It is Silver and Black Today. We're having a great time the day after Christmas. We hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas and want to wish you a happy New Year coming up this next weekend. Of course, we'll have some shows in between now and then. We also will be live on New Year's Eve after the Raiders Indy game in Indianapolis. Don't forget also, make sure you catch Mo's work up on Bleacher Report. He covers the entire NFL there. He's got some gaming stuff. He's got fantasy. He's got a little bit of everything. He even covers pickleball. No, I'm just kidding. He doesn't cover pickleball, but if it's NFL related, sometimes NBA. You're still doing NBA, right? Once NFL's over?
When the Knicks are hot, that's when I try to,
That's when the Knicks. Okay,
sneak in a little bit of NBA.
Yes. Poor Detroit Piston fans. That is unbelievable. I still can't believe the Pistons are that bad. But anyway, catch his stuff up there. Also, do me a favor, catch his Bleacher Report lives, right? So you hear Mo here on our show and our videos and all that stuff, but he's got a great thing going up there. Great content from Bleacher Report with Mo around the Raiders. So go ahead and download the Bleacher Report app so when Mo goes live, you can follow him on x.com at Moton, Moemoton. He always lets you know when he's going live. So make sure you do that and catch those too. You can follow me. Also, LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. We certainly appreciate you guys being with us. Okay, Mo, we look at the Raiders. 2 games left in 2023. Things feel a lot better than they did even 3 weeks ago around Raider Nation. Slim playoffs still alive. They have to win out. The Chiefs have to lose out. The way the Raiders completely dismantled the Chiefs and the way they continue to be frustrated on offense and even defense, they're starting to fall off a little bit. Attrition and their play is just down a little bit. Could happen. I mean, I know everybody wants to, the Chiefs will pick it up. They just need to get to the playoff. I don't know about that. So the Raiders' slim playoff hopes still alive. I would not get overly hopeful. Again, I'm not an emotional fan. For those of you who are, a lot of you who listen to us, of course you are, and that's good. That's what you should do as a fan. I wouldn't get your hopes too high, but at least the Raiders can put themselves in a position to where if others falter, they're able to do that. What's crazy, Mo? Scenario. If the Raiders win out and the Chiefs lose out, the Raiders would win the division. How could you? I can't even imagine that happening, but it's a possibility, my man.
So you're saying there's a chance. Can you imagine
No.
the Chiefs losing to the Bengals, right? And maybe Jamar Chase is back. Who knows? That could be a close game. Could go either way. But can you imagine Easton Stick helping the Raiders solidify an AFC West title by helping the Chargers beat the Chiefs and then the Raiders beating the Denver Broncos? Raider fans would be insufferable all over social media. On whatever app you're on, TikTok, Snapface, Facebook, the X. the Raider fans would have to ban certain Raider fans from social media if that happens, because can you believe like Antonio Pierce going 6-3 Raiders after thumping the Chiefs in their home on Christmas in front of Taylor Swift, then going on to win the AFC West, winning the division title, and
No.
it would be unreal. Unreal.
It would be unreal, and I know we're ginning people up, and they're going to be pissed
I
at us when it
know.
doesn't happen. But if it does happen, I mean, yes, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take Easton Stick beating Patrick Mahomes. I mean, no one can script that. No one will believe that that's going to happen. But it would be remarkable for the Raiders to go in consecutive weeks and beat the Chargers by 43 points, put up 63 against that team, and then have that team help them get into the playoffs and win the division. That would be atypical NFL for 2023, Mo, because the league has been, especially on the AFC side. The AFC side is just crazy. We saw on Christmas night after the Raiders won, we saw Lamar Jackson and the Ravens knock on the door and say, hey, you guys all forgot about us. We might just be the best team in the NFL. And as of right now, I think you have to say they are, because what did they do? They went to San Francisco. Well, Santa Clara. Went to Santa Clara and beat the crap out of the 49ers, made Brock Purdy look like Tommy DeVito, right? I mean, it wasn't even, and I was like, hey, I was defending Brock Purdy as an MVP candidate 2 weeks ago. Now he goes in there, all he does is throw interceptions, and the Ravens roll. So this league, that's what's so crazy about this league and the AFC, how many teams are alive. You talk about the Bengals. The Bengals beat the Chiefs. They're still alive. Okay? Now they have Jake Browning, all these backup quarterbacks. Mo, it blows my mind. So that's why when a lot of the Raider fans 2 weeks ago, it's over, tank, blah. Where are those people now? Where are they now?
Thank you. I said that during my Bleacher Report Live. I remember the Raiders dropped their last after their last loss, after Minnesota not scoring any points. A lot of people go, "Oh, the Raiders got a tank for a quarterback." It was Axel Max Crosby, and he was like, "We're not we're not shutting it down." A lot of people wanted Max Crosby to shut it down because of his knee. Shut down Josh Jacobs. Now Josh Jacobs didn't play against the Chiefs, but Max Crosby was still on the field a whole lot. And now, lo and behold, cue the Undertaker meme that you see on the X a lot, pushing the casket door open. That's the Raiders' playoff hopes right now. They're all of a sudden their playoff hopes are alive and back. And I would say the Raiders are underdogs by field goal on the road, and that's typical for favorites, for home teams to have that field goal advantage, against the spread. So basically, they're evenly matched with the Colts. And as I said, the Raiders have already beaten the Denver Broncos with Josh McDaniels.
Yes.
So there's the two teams that are left on the Raiders schedule right now. The Raiders can definitely win out and go 9-8 and appears to be 6-3, and they could be in the playoffs. So to those people, I said it before. Remember the 2021 season. I know it was different under Rich Bisaccia because he had a veteran quarterback and a veteran offensive play caller in Greg Olsen.
Yes.
But you don't close the door on the season. Now, I know I even made fun of Devontae Adams and said, realistically, Raiders probably not going to make it. But and you look up now at the standings, even at 7-8, they're still a sub-500 team. They got a shot. And the way the defense is playing, it gives them a legitimate shot to make the playoffs. Now, while we did say that it seems realistic that the Raiders aren't going to make the playoffs, we also said you don't shut it down. You don't shut it down because you never know what could happen. And as Max Crosby said, it's BS. Not shutting it down. Devontae Adams was a little stronger in saying we still have a chance, and he was right. Now, the Raiders go on the road and beat the Colts. We're having a whole new discussion. Now, I will say this too. The Raiders had a lot of help this past weekend. A lot of the things that the Raiders needed for teams to lose happened. Mason Rudolph coming in for the Steelers and beating the Bengals and knocking them down a peg. Yeah. The Raiders taking care of business against the Chiefs. The Jaguars losing again. I believe they're on a 3-game losing streak. The Houston Texans losing. The Colts losing, as you mentioned earlier. So they had a ton of help to get back in the hunt. But now there's some light. And I think that they're feeling confident. And I wrote this in the latest Bleacher Report power rankings. The Raiders are playing their best football right now.
No question.
Now, now I will.
Defensively.
Now on the other side of defensively. Now I will say this, and that gets to my point about the offense. If Aiden O'Connell doesn't turn it around at some point, do the Raiders consider bringing back Jimmy Garoppolo, saying that Jimmy Garoppolo can't, as bad as Jimmy Garoppolo was, can he be any worse than Aiden O'Connell is right now if we're trying to make the playoffs? And I think that's a decision that has to come up with Antonio Pierce, because he is the CEO type head coach. He has to make those decisions, because I saw a lot of Raider fans, or some Raider fans, bring up Jimmy Garoppolo. Can he be any worse than Aiden O'Connell on Christmas Day? And the answer is probably no.
Yeah, and I did, and I saw that too, and I had people ask me, and I said, absolutely not, don't bring him in. I said, you got to stick with O'Connell. As bad as he was, he didn't complete a pass after the first quarter. We didn't get deep into this on the show because it is what it is. But he just did not have a good game, just plain simple. And that's the only thing you see. Now, a lot of people will say, well, rookie quarterback, you see them make mistakes. Yes, but the only thing concerning with what we saw with O'Connell was that you see a quarterback progress, and there's been progression for Aiden O'Connell. And then you see, you might see him make mistakes, but when you see a serious regression and then a lack of consistency is my only concern. If he was a little off yesterday, just wasn't great, wasn't terrible, but the fact that you don't complete a pass after the first quarter is a massive problem. That's a massive step backwards. It's not just a small mistake that a rookie quarterback made, like he threw a pick or something. That's not what it's about. So that's what's concerning. So now you get into the game with Indy next week. It'll be an early game because they're on the Eastern time zone. I don't know. I don't know in that situation if you risk the injury contract situation with Garoppolo. Do you want to be on the hook for $11 million if he goes down hurt? All that stuff. I think you have to weigh that and say, okay, are we playing for the future? Yes, we want to try to make it to the playoffs this year. No question about it. But I think, to your point, that's the tough decision you get to make as the head coach.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating for starting Jimmy Garoppolo against the Colts. That's not what I'm saying. I know a lot of people say, well, Mo said start Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, if you have a game similar to the Minnesota Vikings game where it's 3-3 or 0-0 going into the fourth quarter, and you're looking up at the scoreboard and you see teams ahead of you in the AFC have lost football games, and you have a chance to win and possibly control your own destiny, do you say, hey, we'll pull Aiden O'Connell for the fourth quarter, start Jimmy Garoppolo, who's an experienced veteran, and then we start Aiden O'Connell in the last week against Denver? We don't completely bench the kid, but for this situation in this game, we start Jimmy Garoppolo. Because let me tell you, I watched the Giants and Eagles game on Christmas Day. Tommy DeVito stunk it up for a whole entire half. And the Giants were down by 2 scores. They bring in Tyrod Taylor, and all of a sudden the Giants' offense is clicking, and they almost pull off of a comeback. Now, the Eagles still win that game, but the Giants made that game interesting. At one point, it was 20-18 after the Eagles are up by 2 scores after they pulled Tommy DeVito for Tyrod Taylor. So sometimes benching your rookie quarterback for a more experienced veteran who the other team didn't prepare for can spark your offense and help you win the game. Now, again, the Giants didn't pull off the comeback. But for the Raiders, if it's 0-0 or 3-3 and you're not in the 2-score deficit, a veteran can absolutely put you over the top and help you win the game.
Yeah, you need to see Aiden O'Connell come out and recover quickly. Yep. You know, you got to get. He had an okay first quarter against the Chiefs. Obviously, not great, but you need to see him respond in Indianapolis. If you don't see him respond, then you do. You still have to play for the playoffs. You do. And listen, I said yesterday, don't bring in Jimmy
Garoppolo.
Garoppolo, thank you. Hello, I had a brain pause there. Don't bring in Garoppolo because the Raiders defense was playing so well. Like I thought, well, geez, you know, now you get back to the end of the game and the Chiefs get the ball back and with more time, then suddenly you might have a situation where it's like, oh, geez, now you got to come from behind and win this. Is he the kid to do it? Or do you put a veteran out there who's been through the fire a little more? So something to ask. And I know people don't want to ever entertain any of those questions, but it's the way it goes. So, and by the way, that's the thing when we talk about quarterbacks. And I just published, we did a top 10 quarterbacks in Raiders history up on Sportsnaut today. And going through when I was doing this story, and it's just a quick hitter, you realize how many quarterbacks in the history of not just the Raiders, but all franchises, how few there are that are true long-time franchise quarterbacks. Because in the Raiders' top 10, you have some guys who were there 2 years. Jeff Hostetler, he's on the list because he had such a great impact in 2 years. But it wasn't that long. Same can go for Carson Palmer, right? So when you find a it's hard to find quarterbacks. You look at the Chicago Bears, they've never had one. I mean, Jim McMahon, that's it. Like nobody. So back to our discussion earlier, you got to find the quarterback. And so especially in today's league, get as many as you can. And I think the Raiders have an opportunity over the next 2 weeks. I think you're starting to see them solidify what their roster will look like on defense. Clearly getting good performance there. You could still improve at linebacker. I still think they draft a young defensive tackle for the inside. And then on offense, I think you're looking obviously for quarterback and some other depth there. So it'll be interesting the rest of the way. Mo, tell everybody what you got going the rest of this week as you and I work through up until the new year.
Shout out to everyone who watched my Bleacher Report live on Tuesday, early Tuesday. That was 9 a.m. West Pacific time, noon Eastern time. For people who joined that chat and just were able to take another victory lap, not on a bus this time, but another victory lap for that victory over the Chiefs. I will have a Sportsnaut article coming out this week. It'll likely drop on Thursday, just talking about the Raiders' young defensive core, which we mentioned today. I think the Raiders, for once in a long time, can look at the defensive side of their roster and say, wow, we have a future there with a lot of young guys coming along. As I made note during the game, the Raiders have Jack Jones under contract through the 2025 season. So this is not a situation where the Raiders have to sign to a contract after this year after he's showing out. He's under contract for another 2 years after this season. And he's under $1 million for each of those years. So I think that's great value for picking him up, having that connection to Antonio Pierce and then Champ Kelly, who's the interim GM, signing off on that. So I'll have that coming out on Thursday. And on Sunday, of course, I'll be on after the game, Raiders Colts, to break it down. If the Raiders win, we'll talk more playoff scenarios. If the Raiders lose, we'll talk about who stays and who goes with that roster and that coaching staff and that front office for 2024.
See, it's all about having plans, Mo. Just like at quarterback, you got to have multiple plans. They win, you talk about this. You lose, you talk about that.
So. A person with options is a powerful person. A team with quarterback options has a future.
There you go. Saying. And we will be back on Thursday, too. Hopefully we'll get some mail. We'll get some mail in. It's a holiday week, so the mail's been a little slow this week. But we'll get the voicemail out there because I need to be able to hear you guys, because we usually get some good calls. And I like to give out the number so you guys know how to get a hold of us, because if we're going to do a mailbag, I like the sound. I really do. 702-900. So 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Call in, talk to us, give us some messages. I have a couple from right after the game, so we got a couple already. We need a couple more. Let's do that. Call us. Tell us what you think about the win. Tell us what you think about the Raiders the rest of the way. Tell us what you think about Antonio Pierce. Should he be the coach? Should he not be the coach? There's still some people who don't believe it. So tell us. You can also mail us at mail@silverandblacktoday.com. That's mail@silverandblacktoday.com. Go ahead, Mo.
One important thing that I saved for the end of the show. I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, but before the Raider game, I said if the Raiders beat the Chiefs on Christmas, ... and it was a lot, and people were allowed to say what they would do if the Raiders won on Christmas against the Chiefs. There were a lot of people saying, "I'll take off of work. I'm gonna have a victory cigar."
Yeah.
One guy at Raider Gilly said he would propose to his girlfriend if the Raiders beat the Chiefs in the Arrowhead on Christmas. Raiders win the game. I went back to the post that I made and I said, "Hey, Raider Gilly, what's going on? Give us an update." And lo and behold, he posted a picture on the X, proposed to his girlfriend. I don't know if you could see it. I'm gonna put the I don't know if you can see it. There you go.
There it is. Nice.
Raider
if you're
Gilly,
watching on YouTube, you can see it.
If you're watching on YouTube, there's the happy couple. Raider, she's not giving you the finger, people. It's the ring on the finger right there. Raider Gilly and his new fiance.
Yay!
So Moton is bringing Raider love together for the new year. Shout out to Raider Gilly for coming through and being a man of his word. If he's listening to this, shout out to you. Appreciate you.
He is now. We will be selling next week Matchmaker Mo t-shirts. So be ready. We love alliteration on this show. So we're getting ready for that. But there he is, Mo, bringing together love, happiness for life. There you go. All right. Raider Gilly, congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Congrats.
That's killer. We'll try to get a mailbag in. We will also be back with our Thursday show. So make sure you tune in for that one. We'll take a look at the Colts. We'll see what else is going on in Raider Nation. It's been a weird couple weeks, Mo, with the weird schedule and the long time off and the Thursday game followed by a Monday game. It's been really strange. So we'll get back into our timing here and give you shows when you're used to it. But you can catch them all here as well. I talked about the top 10 Raider quarterbacks in history I have up there. I also have a piece up later today, if you're listening to us in the morning, on Antonio Pierce up on sportsnot.com and his big win and what it means for the Raiders and what it means for him and what it means for that Raider attitude being back. Because, I was a little skeptical at the beginning. Like, could he really bring it back? But boy, after this Chiefs win, man, it was on full display. So go up and check that out up on sportsnot.com today. Mo, my friend, we will see you for the mailbag and we'll see you on Thursday as well.
See you then.
All right. Everybody, I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. Again, Merry Christmas to all of you, and we will see you before the new year. So we'll get our shows in before the end of 2023, talking about the Raiders as they continue a playoff run. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Either way, Raider football's back in a different way, and we're all here for it, and we love you guys being along with us. For our producer, Mike Robier from Moton, I'm Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black today. Raider Nation, enjoy the rest of your holiday week, and we'll talk to you soon.